Hello fellow campers. Today I'm going to talk about repairing, or in this case replacing, these full extension drawer glides that were part of my outdoor kitchen cooktop unit. And wasn't going to make a video, so part of the problem is I've already have this somewhat disassembled, but then I got to thinking, well, maybe somebody'd be interested in seeing if you have to replace one, and I'm going to go through a few instances why you probably will eventually. So what I've laid out here, so this is the main frame of the drawer glide system. I'll show where it goes here in the camper in a second, but I want to point out some differences on these glides. So the factory one is the small unit that's laying, that I'm kind of focusing in on right here, and it sits below the one that I've replaced it with. And the reason I had to replace this, you might be able to see this, these ball bearings, they run on little ball bearing tracks, and that had bent somehow, and that bearing had popped out of there and it was bent. And actually this thing had been giving me trouble for a long time, and I just kind of ignored it until I couldn't get the unit back to go fully back into the cabinet where it belongs so I could close the door. So then I had to take it out and set it aside. And a couple of things about these drawer glides. I was a newbie to this. I'm not a cabinet maker by trade. So went to my local cabinet supply shop, which those folks at Ray's Cabinet here in town have been extremely helpful through the years for various projects I've worked on for my campers, and showed them what I had, and they said, well, these are the drawer full extension drawer glides they have here, and I'll kind of zoom in on them here in the bottom. So they come in 2-inch increments. I measured it, I'm like, oh, it's 15 inches. Well, learned a couple of things, at least in the US product market. They come in 2-inch increments, 14, 16, 18, etc. This happens to be a 16-inch drawer glide. These are rated for 80 pounds. And you can't see that here in the camera probably, but if you were to hold one and the other, you would see that the ones that I replaced it with here are considerably heavier, more robust. Get down here even closer. The ball bearings are larger. I'm sorry, the lighting's not great. It's a rainy, cloudy day here. And so the brackets are heavier. Probably be able to see that a little bit here. So here's the original bracket, kind of thin, lightweight, flimsy. This is the bracket, heavy duty. I added the bolts and the backing plate to hold the glide to the mounting bracket. They're a press fit, and in a home you probably wouldn't care, but in a harsh environment like in an RV, bouncing around, etc., I felt that having it bolted would be better. I did try to reuse some of the original hardware, screws and stuff that were part of the camper. You may or may not decide to do that. These were in pretty good shape. I was pretty satisfied. I'm hoping that I'm making the right choice. If not, I'll take it back out and do it. It's not that big of a deal. And as you can see here, so you can see that the original glide is considerably smaller and lighter weight. And kind of surprised actually, because let me go move over here, because this cooktop unit weighs about 21 or 22 pounds with nothing on it, and that's pretty damn heavy. Excuse me, pretty doggone heavy. And you know, you put your cooking utensils on there. I like to cook with cast iron, things of that nature. And there's a lot of weight there, and I think that's why the original drawer glide failed there, it got bent, just because of the amount of weight. And I do use the outdoor kitchen. That was part of my requirements when I purchased my camper, and I know this is upside down so you can't see it. It's just a regular 2-burner Suburban cooktop here, and this is the counter device, or the cabinet they made to hook this, to place it into, and well, I'll show you in a few minutes. So a heavier duty drawer glide system was certainly probably necessary, and again, I understand the scale of economics, etc. But let me go show where this actually goes into, and then we'll show it kind of how it gets together and some of the things to look out for if you decide to replace yours. Okay, so here's the opening that the unit came out of. So you can see there's the opening that rolls in, and I'll show that in a minute. We'll put that assembly back in there. I just wanted to show you what was leading up to this. And a few things you want to look out for, we'll point out in just a second. It has more to do to make sure for the alignment of the drawer glides and everything once you go to put everything back together. So we'll point out a few things just to look out for when you decide if you need to replace yours. All right, one of the things I did want to point out, and hopefully you can see it there, is, yep, there we go, is I am changing some of the hardware around. So the left screw, which is the factory screw that they use, the square head, I believe they're Robertson type screw heads. And the right, I just happen to have a couple of sheet metal screws, a pan head. And because, for a lot of things, I just wanted a heavier screw in there. So that it's, I think that's probably about a number, probably a number 10 sheet metal screw, I'm guessing. I should have checked it before I got and made the video. And that other one's probably a number 8. So I bumped it up a size to create some more strength, a bigger diameter, better grip into the wood, etc. You don't have to, just something to point out. Alright, I want to show here, so we've the drawer glides and the support board in the back. I've got them back installed. A couple of things I will make mention of. One, it is extremely important that everything is square and parallel, because these brackets, these drawer glides, these full extension drawer glides, there really isn't much wiggle room. And anything more than a 1/16 of an inch and you're going to end up having binding problems. Been there, done that. So you really just want to take your time. There's a couple of ways you can kind of verify this. Most newer campers, this wood is more or less dimensionally stable. Find yourself some fixed points here like I did, and measure down the length of the drawer glide. Be sure that is exactly parallel to a fixed member there. Realize there's nothing on this side to work with, but if you have this side done correctly, if you've reused the existing structure pieces like I have here, with some careful measurements, you'll probably be alright. It's important that your drawer glides on the front match evenly. Mine is off by a fraction of an inch, and actually you can tell it a little bit, but I'm not going to try to, with the wood and everything, it's too hard to try to readjust the screw, and it's just minimal. But you can probably see there the bottom of the rail rests right on this board. Here in the front is, I'm using as a ledger board. There you can see just a fraction of an inch, probably a 1/16. Like I said, anything more than a 1/16 in my personal experience and you're going to end up having problems. I made some notes earlier. You might be able to see them. I wrote them on the board so I wouldn't forget. That is the height of this ledger board in the front versus the height of the bracket in the back. You want the bottom of the rail to be parallel to the floor here, if you will. The width dimension, I had a note in there from the cooktop unit to make absolutely sure that my dimensions there were good. Again, more than a 1/16 of an inch and you're going to have binding problems. There just isn't a lot of play in these drawer glides. And so those are some hints I would pass along to you. Once you got it fastened down, if all works well, then you should be good, and I'll show that in a minute. Here we'll put the cooktop back in here, and it is certainly, I've already had it in here, I took it out to do this, certainly much more stable, and I think it's going to be a lot better, but we'll show that in just a second. Alright, so now here's the installation of the cooktop. I've got it installed back into where it belongs, and certainly a much more stable platform. I have added a couple of these latches here, one on each side, which will keep the cooktop from wanting to roll in. If you bump into it, it does roll a lot easier than it used to on these newer drawer glides. One other thing is it created a little additional clearance, so I was able actually to bring the gas hose from underneath. I wasn't able to do that before, so it's a little neater when you're working with it, I think, or at least I'm happy with the result. So again, it was just an easy to do repair, I should say upgrade. Those pair of those drawer glides, those full extension drawer glides, I think were a little right at $10 for the pair. And I had these latches. You could use any type of latches. I happen to have these in my shop, in my hardware box, so I just used a couple of them. The only thing I probably will do is get some, just because I'm going to, is probably get a couple of pieces of sheet brass or something, just provide a strike area so that they won't that you move this back and forth, they won't damage the finish. This wood is just a kind of a funky engineered wood with a picture type cover, laminate, whatever finish on it. So it's not very stable or strong. You can already see I bumped it there. There's a little clip in there. I'm just going to wrap that with a piece of sheet copper, I think. Same way over here. But anyhow, hopefully that'll give you some ideas if you decide you need to upgrade yours, or yours might, like mine, got damaged, the Glide got damaged. Really an easy fix. Some basic hand tools. There was no major modifications. There was no modifications whatsoever. Just basic hand tools. If you have a cordless screwdriver, it goes a little easier. And a drill, because you had to pilot these holes if you decide to add some latches here. This laminate is pretty tough. And anyhow, hopefully you got some ideas out of that, and enjoy, and we'll catch you down the road.